Hello and welcome to Unleashed, the show that explores how to thrive as an independent professional. I'm your host, Will Bachman, and I am so excited to have David A. Fields back on the show. He was a guest on episode number 001 of this show, and many more times. I think, David, you've been on, 7, 8, 9 times. It's always great to have you back. Everyone should buy David's book. I've given out a couple hundred copies to The Irresistible Consultant's Guide to Winning Clients by David A. Fields. We'll include a link in the show notes. And you should subscribe to his weekly blog. It's the first thing I ever read every Wednesday morning. Go to davidafields.com and find the link to subscribe. David, welcome to the show.
Hey, Will, thank you so much. It always makes my day or my entire week just to get a chance to chat with you.
Not your month, so David is for listeners who don't know, David is the top coach in the United States. He might say North America. Let's expand it. In North America, to independent consultants and boutique firms with revenues of 1 million to 125 million, something like that. David, correct me. And so he sees many firms and what they do. And today, David, I'm hoping we can talk about sort of annual review process to look back at your year, as well as planning process of looking forward to the year, of what you advise boutique firms as well as independent consultants on that process. And we're doing it in advance here in early October, so people will have time to think about what they want to do over the next couple months to do this process. So talk to me where you'd like to start.
All right. So let's dive into that. It's funny, Will, and you and I obviously talked about the topic just a little bit beforehand, and I was thinking, should we actually talk with listeners or about the value of doing any kind of planning? But then, of course, whoever listens to this is sort of self-selected in, right? So if you click to listen on this podcast, it's probably because you believe there's some value in planning. And if you didn't, I can't reach you anyway. So we probably don't need to sell anybody on the value of it. What do you think?
If you're not interested in an annual review process, why did you click on this episode? Go to another episode. There's lots of other good episodes to listen to. All right. So people are already bought in, but they say, maybe they already do it already, but they think maybe David has a better way of doing it. So,
yeah, I think actually there is a better way,
okay,
and than the typical. So the typical approach to planning is, I'll sit down with my team, or if my team consists of me and my dog, I'll sit down with my dog, over the course of a day. And, we're going to dig in, we're going to develop our plan. And, or a group, we're going to take 2 days and bring everybody together and we're going to hammer out our plan. And that's just requires an enormous amount of energy and time, and everybody ends up exhausted as opposed to exhilarated and excited. So I think there is a better way. And it's a way we suggest to our clients. Probably one of our clients who uses what I'm going to walk through most religiously is a client that's grown 12x since we've started, from the mid 6 figures into well into 7 figures. And now, is it because of this planning process? Well, I can't say that. Just kind of saying they use this. So it's pretty helpful. It's 8 weeks as opposed to 2 days, and it's 8 weeks because you only need 90 minutes each week. And 90 minutes each week is way easier to schedule. It's hard to carve out a couple of days and retain that energy, but carving out 90 minutes each week for 8 weeks, that you can do. So you end up with more energy, better thinking, more reflection time. And this is a perfect time to do this episode, Will, because coming towards the end of the year, and you can kind of plan out your 8 weeks. You can have it correspond with the final 8 weeks of the year or close to that, and then you're all set up.
It's a perfect time.
So how does that sound? How does that resonate with
It's
you?
a perfect time because we have about 8 weeks. If you, let's say, take Thanksgiving week off and Christmas week, now's the time to start.
Now's the time to start. So you want me to run you through the 8 weeks?
Absolutely.
All right, let's jump in. And by the way, and I know you'll put this in the show notes, this process was outlined in an article actually during an October article a couple of years ago. So I'll give you the link to that. And as a listener, if you like this, you think, let me give this a try. You just go there and you'll have a handy reminder of what happens in each week.
We will definitely include that link in the show notes.
All right, perfect. Okay, week one. Week one is simply reporting the facts. You pull together, your team or just yourself. And the idea here isn't to figure out implications or why did things happen or any of that. It's just to pull together and report the facts. Now, if you have a team, that's helpful because then you can have different people on the team responsible for different facts. What was your revenue? How many clients did you have? How many clients did you lose? How many clients did you gain? If you're a little bit larger firm, you might want facts around productivity, utilization, revenue worked per consultant, revenue sold these kinds of things. So there's lots of KPIs, and I don't want to go into a whole thing of KPIs right now. But whatever data you feel is going to be important, week one, that's all you need to do for that 90 minutes is just pull together the facts and have a review so everybody who's going to participate can see this is the data we have, or these are the data we have. And by the way, you might realize, we're missing some important data. That can come up in week one. And now you have a week to pull together a little bit more data if you need it. That's it. That's week one. Make sense?
Makes sense. And I know you don't want to get into a full KPI discussion, but in addition to revenue, probably another thing to look at would be what deals did you pitch and lose, right? So getting a list of all those clients where you submitted a proposal and, maybe some KPIs or some info around how many, clients did you have discussions with? Out of those, how many proposals did you submit? Out of those, how many did you win? And what were the reasons for the losses? So whatever that fact base is.
Absolutely right.
Week one is fact finding. Okay, what's week two?
Fact finding is exactly right. And you're right. You look across the four elements of a consulting firm. The four elements are winning engagements and profitably creating value. Those two together are kind of the spinning cycle, the core of consulting. And then you have infrastructure supporting that spinning cycle. If you wrap strategy around it, you have yourself a consulting firm. Consulting is very simple. Win engagements, profitably create value, have infrastructure to support you, and then have strategy. In each of those four buckets, you can have some KPIs. So exactly what you said, in winning engagements, how do we do across each conversion, across each stage of the pipeline? In profitably delivering value, what kind of feedback are we getting from clients? What does our client experience look like? Utilization, all those kinds of things. So yes, I would suggest KPIs in each bucket.
All right, fantastic. All right, so what's week two?
Okay. Week two is where you take a look at the data and you come to week two with questions, with thoughts, with observations, and week two is about lessons learned. What did we learn? Week two is kind of the retrospective part of this. We say, what did we learn based on these data? And what do we want to bring forward into the future? And there's a huge advantage to having a week delay between the first session and the second session, as opposed to doing it in the moment. When you do it in the moment, when we say, okay, we're going to have planning day, people present data and then you kind of just react, right? You're reacting, just with emotion and what do you see at the moment, all of that. Whereas if you have a little bit of time to reflect, to think about it, you start to say, well, okay, maybe this was a lesson, but it wasn't the most important lesson. Or maybe it wasn't even a lesson. Maybe, my instant reaction wasn't the ideal reaction. So by the time you come into the week two session, you've had a little bit of time to sit with the data, to think about it coherently, and then say, here's my top priority learning from the data. We saw that this failed, this succeeded. We've got a real gap, a conversion in this place, whatever it is. And it allows you to focus on the key lessons learned. And that's what week two is, lessons learned. And what are the implications of that? And again, that's it. You leave it there.
All right, so 60 seconds on this of maybe some questions to help tee up lessons learned. I'm thinking perhaps, what did we try that worked really well? What did we try that didn't work as well as we hoped? What surprised us this year? What are some what are some other questions, David, to help tee up some lessons learned?
So those are really smart, insightful questions, Will. I will admit we use a very simple retrospective approach for most times we do retrospectives with clients and internally. We really ask 4 questions and just 4 questions. What worked well? And it could be about a certain topic. What worked well this year? What worked well in terms of winning engagements this year? What worked well in terms of our delivery this year? We may break it down. What worked well in our client experience? Then we ask, what didn't work so well? And make the list. It is what it is. Right? Then the third question is, if we knew then what we know now, what would we have done differently? So that's question 3. Perfect, 2020 hindsight. If we were to have started the year different, over, what would we do differently? And that leads to the 4th question, which I always delegate to my director of operations, which is, given everything we just talked about, what are the implications for our systems? Meaning, what do we need to regularly do differently? Not just kind of what's a general change, but how do we improve the way we operate? That's it. That's kind of our standard retrospective. And I will tell you that in and of itself seems to lead to enormous value.
All right. That was a pure gold mini episode right there, those 4 questions. That was awesome. Okay, let's go on to week 3.
Okay, week 3 is a chance to revisit your mission as a firm, your vision, your values, because now having learned, now we've reflected. First, kind of weeks 1, 2, and 3 were all reflection. Now we're going to start making changes. So every firm should have an immutable purpose, and that does not change. Your immutable purpose never changes. It is what will, you might call your North Star or something like that, and that should sustain your firm over the entire life of your firm. However, your mission might change. Your vision for the firm may change in response to the environment, in response to your own, personal sort of life stage or where you want to go with the business. Ideally, your values don't change over time, but they might. You might realize your values are not in sync with your behavior, and so either your behavior needs to change, or you need to be honest about what your values are. This is now that we're going forward, we're going to start going forward, looking forward at the highest level. Mission, vision, values, and you just sort of, by the end of this 90 minutes, you record any changes and kind of your new mission, vision, and value. You can tweak it, of course, going forward, but that's what we're going to do in week 3.
Okay. So quick question here. For some people, maybe I'd be part of some people, mission, vision, and purpose can be a little bit of these fuzzy terms. So make it practical for us.
Yeah.
Give me an example of a cascaded, what would an example of a purpose be, of a mission and a vision, and how those nest together, just to kind of make that real for us.
Wow. Holy cow. That's going to put me on the spot to come up with an example. So let's see how I can do against that. So an immutable purpose is your overarching why. Why do you exist as a firm? And these can be the kind of fuzzy, high-level, heartwarming sort of drivers that make you get up in the morning and hopefully do what you want to do. It could be having an impact on the world, creating good, serving, kind of serving a profession, whatever it is. So this should be really your deepest why. It could be, Will, that with Umbrex, you want to enable the smartest of the smart, and with Veritux and your communities to thrive as independents, and you want to enable companies, organizations to use the top talent in the world. And maybe this is kind of a driving purpose. I don't know. Or you might say that's not really my purpose. That might be my mission, because one person's purpose might be another person's mission. So you may decide, my immutable purpose that's never going to change ever in the world is I'm going to create the most impact for the most people. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to build communities that create impact for people. Okay, I'm not sure, but it would be interesting to hear what you believe is your immutable purpose.
Yeah, our purpose is to help independent professionals thrive.
Okay. So is there any circumstance in which that could change?
None that comes to mind, but
Okay,
I mean,
good.
I haven't thought it through enough, but I don't think so.
Okay. So that might be your purpose. And it's like this guiding North Star that no, come hell or high water, would not change for you and your firm. And it's the rudder, if you will, for your firm that allows you to steer the business through turbulent times. Because no matter what else changes, your purpose never changes. Now, how does that then cascade down into a mission? The mission is probably just a little bit more changeable. That's something that, well, hopefully it won't change or won't change much, but it might change. It might change in a decade or a couple decades. So your mission might be, we're going to build a community for independent professionals that allow them to thrive. Well, at some point you might decide you've fulfilled that mission. We've built a community. So now we're going to head off on a new mission, still within our immutable purpose, but we've achieved the mission.
Okay, got it. So,
Okay.
so for maybe a more typical consulting firm, a mission might be something like, I don't know, preparing for Y2K or something like that, where you work on that for a decade, and then, okay, Y2K is passed, so on to the next mission.
Exactly right. Exactly right. Now, the vision is still another step down and a little bit more tactical. This is where we see ourselves. We see ourselves, a vision being, because vision is see yourself. We see ourselves being a $20 million firm with a branch that is dedicated to putting the top tier consultants into highly valuable projects and providing a community for those consultants to learn from each other. Right? It could be more defined, could be a little vaguer, but it's taking your mission and now putting it into, so here's how we see ourselves doing it.
All right, so it's starting to get a little bit more specific about what you can actually see, right?
Exactly.
All right.
So does that help with kind of immutable purpose and mission and vision?
It does, and then on the values piece, my guess there is my thought. I'd add a couple of cents there. Is that it might not be that your one value is no longer important to you at all, but that your relative priority of different values, either as a firm or as an individual, changes. So, maybe you value economic security, but you also value freedom and creativity, and you value, independence, or you value, altruism, making a contribution. And those things could continue to all be important to you, but maybe like the number one thing out of that list might vary over time.
Yeah, I think that's very possible. We try to keep ours consistent. We should do a whole thing on values because values are fascinating. The one thing I see in consulting firms in terms of values specifically is the values are not true. And what I mean by that is they're not a realistic reflection of how the consulting firm behaves. And if you're out of integrity with your values, then something is amiss. Your values are aspirational, which is fine, but if they're too far removed, they're not truthful. And I think it's important to be truthful with who you are as a firm, because it allows you to operate better, allows you to hire better if you're doing hiring, to set your strategies correctly, just understanding who you are. And yes, you can say, here's who I want to be, but if there's a gap, you better figure out a way to address it.
Yeah. So
that you are being truthful. And speaking of integrity, because we did some research on this, 40%, between 40 and 50% of consulting firms list integrity, that specific word, as one of their values. Now, what that says about our industry is we can have a good conversation about that. That you need to list that, or that's important to list that. I think is kind of fascinating in itself. We've made it to week 3,
All right, so let's keep going. All right, so we'll do a future session on values and purpose, mission, vision. So we had a little mini episode here. Okay, so week 3 is a time to reflect. Am I still living my purpose, mission, vision, values? Do I need to update that?
And to change.
And do
Week
I
3
need
is
to
also
update?
to change.
Yeah.
Update.
All right.
Update.
So week 4.
All right. Week 4, goals, gaps, and objectives. So now you're going to take 90 minutes, again, as a team or as an individual, depending on the size of your firm, you're going to come up with your goals. Now, goals are results. Here are the results we want to achieve over the next 12 months. I sometimes am a little bit loose with the nomenclature. But for today's podcast, that's how we'll define goals, which is results. And, strangely, I wouldn't spend too much time on goals. I don't think goals are enormously helpful. They're just, it's just like a stake in the sand. You reach it or you don't reach it. And the fact that you write the goal down, despite what a lot of people say, I don't think it's writing the goal down that allows you to achieve it. I think it's the next two pieces that allow you to achieve or exceed these results that you have in mind.
What do you mean, the gaps and the objectives pieces?
Exactly, the gaps and the objectives.
So
the gaps are the difference between the results you want to achieve and where you are right now. So if you say we want to be a $5 million firm, and right now, historically, we've been a $2 million firm, you get a $3 million gap. And you're going to come up with a lot of gaps between where you want to be and where you are now. And all gaps do is give you a chance to prioritize. What is it we truly want to work on? Do we want to truly work on winning more clients? Do we want to truly work on maybe we see a real gap in our customer satisfaction. Our churn rate is too high. Do we see a real gap in our ability to land and expand? Or do we lose people? Do we suck at hiring? Which a lot of us do. Well, gaps just really give you a chance to see, okay, I love the picture of where I want to be. The difference between where I want to be and now I can make stark. Which of those are most important?
Yeah,
and from there you get your objective.
Yeah, it's that prioritizing which is most important that I find the hardest, because there's I want to work on all these things. I have so many things I want to work on, but learning to prioritize and just saying, okay, I'm gonna have the discipline to just focus on one thing and get that fixed and nailed.
Yeah,
is hard.
That's a good point, Will. It is really hard. But if you're going to go through the effort of planning and you're not going to prioritize, that seems odd to me. Yeah. Prioritizing is hard, especially for those of us who just love to do stuff and do new stuff. And say, oh yeah, but I want to do that. I want to do that. And who have energy for a lot of things. It's hard to prioritize. I personally have gone through those periods where I say, okay, here's my answer to prioritization. Just hire more people. I want to do everything, and so I'll just hire enough resource that everything can get done. That doesn't work actually phenomenally well.
Well, I mean, hiring takes time, and then incorporating new people and training them up takes bandwidth and time. So,
right, and all those things require direction.
They do. Okay, so let's keep going because I know we're time limit.
Okay,
so week 5.
So wait, we haven't finished week 4 because we didn't talk about objectives.
Yeah. What's how are they different than goals?
That's right. So goals, gaps, objectives. Now, objectives are what it's really about. Objectives are the activities that you will do that are within your control. So now we're talking about how you actually close the gaps. What are we going to commit to that is within our control? Are we going to do more marketing? What does that look like? That's the key. Because the other stuff, goals are not within your control. Therefore, by definition, gaps aren't within your control. Your objectives, though, those are within your control.
Yeah,
so that's what you're going to do in week 4.
Yeah, I like focusing on that much more, right? Like processes within your control. Like I can't guarantee I'm going to get in 5 new leads per month, but I can say, well, I'm going to make 20 outbound calls per week or something. And that's something that I can control. So focus on what you can control.
Yep, exactly right. So now we're 1 month in,
All right.
and we've actually laid the groundwork. You have everything you need to now drill down into a more granular plan for yourself and your firm. And that means week 5, you're actually going to say, all right, so what are the big projects? What are our big initiatives? Maybe we're going to launch a podcast. Maybe I'm going to try to write a book this year. Maybe we're going to tackle a different target audience. How are we going to now bring these objectives to life? And the lots of tools you can do to help yourself and help prioritize. There's something, I don't know whether, did we talk about the focus wheel ever? If not, that would be another thing to talk about at some point. It's a nice little device that forces your prioritization and forces you to focus, because it's just concentric circles. In the outer rings, you could put all the projects, all the things you could possibly do that would push you towards your objectives. And then you sort of gradually, and you can like do it on a Miro or a mural board or a whiteboard with sticky notes. And you just put them all out there. Just put in that big ring, everything. And then there's less and less room for projects as you move towards the center. And your center ring is, here's what we will actually focus on right now. And there should only be room for maybe 4 or 5.
I love that. Physical space constraining it. And
exactly.
No, that's a cool idea. Making, sticky notes and only so much space for sticky notes, visually representing that bandwidth. And I'll chime in here that when you come up with this list of big projects, I found it personally helpful to put those on your wall and actually have them written up so you can see them every day. And I find that just helps kind of remind you to make sure you're working on each one a little bit each day.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And since it works so well for you, I encourage all listeners to go to Will's place and put them up on his wall, because clearly it's a magic wall.
Put your goals up on my wall. That's right. I covered my
magic wall.
I covered my entire room with these 1 foot by 1 foot soundproofing tiles, and which is awesome because I had this super loud, echoey room, and so now I have some space. So swing by, and we have a full room size bulletin board for you to stick your goals up on my wall.
That is excellent. Can you imagine just how much amazing energy there would be if everybody did that? I love that. All right. So after we've all left Will's place and enjoyed some meal in Manhattan, we can spend a week sort of enjoying that and then hit week 6. How's that sound?
Sounds good.
All right. So week 6, you kind of put your milestones for the year in place. Now, in the article, and historically, the way I've suggested this is quarterly objectives. So now you're going to break it down and say, what are our milestones? How you kind of create what I would call a sprint. And I get all sorts of flack from the software community, because the software development community believes a sprint is 2 weeks. I'm like, well, not in consulting. In consulting, a sprint's like 3 months. But you just want to break it down. And what we have found is there is some magic in kind of 3 months. In that range, it's midterm. It's not so far out that you can really put it off, but it's not so close that it gets in the way of immediate work, or fires. It's a nice middle ground. Will, over the past year or so, we've actually changed our approach to this, and we now do trimesters as opposed to quarterly. And the reason is that the cadence we use now, we use with our clients now, is what we call a 3-1 cadence. So we set a goal for 3 months or for the 4 months, but 3 months are really hard work against those goals that move you towards, or those objectives that move you towards those goals. And then the 4th month of the trimester is retrospective, is reflection. How did we do? What worked in this process that allowed us to either achieve the goals or not achieve the goals? And then what can then apply that learning to the next step? Because just running from quarter to quarter to quarter to quarter without any reflection and reset and improvement is less effective, it turns out, than taking a kind of a breather. So we've trained that to trimesters, just FYI. And I don't know, again, if that resonates or doesn't resonate. I'm always interested in your response.
My response is, it sounds like an awesome idea. I feel probably personally I would be probably edging into that reflection month to finish off what I'm supposed to get done in the first 3 months. But
Well, exactly. Yeah. No, that's also the case. It's a catch-up month also.
yeah.
But if you don't have that catch-up month, then you're into the next quarter. Like, wait, I didn't finish last quarter.
Yeah, but I like the idea of laying out these goals on sort of a 3 month or 4 month, say. So, all right, so our big effort of implementing a new internal software package that will be in the first quarter, and then we're going to launch our new website in the second quarter, and we're going to launch our new podcast in the third quarter. So if you have these big meaty projects, not just
Right.
saying, oh, well, in general, sometime in 2022, I'm going to get them done, saying, okay, let's nestle them into a quarter. And then we don't have to worry about it until
Exactly.
then, and then we're going to nail it and focus.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And the beauty of the 3-1 approach we're using, Will, is let's say you say, okay, I'm going to launch this podcast, or I'm going to put in my CRM. And then you get to month 4, after the 3 months when you're supposed to do it, you say, okay, well, we didn't do it. What happened? What got in the way? What can we learn from that? And that allows you to be, again, realistic, understand yourself, improve your processes, improve how you approach your big goals and your work, so that going forward, there's a higher likelihood you will actually achieve them.
Okay.
And I think it's critically important.
Yeah, I
All
like
right.
the reflection.
Week 7?
Okay. Yeah, week 7.
Week 7 is budgets and resources. Then you've got your trimester or your quarterly goals. You've got everything laid out. You have to look and say, well, in order to achieve these, what do we need in terms of resource? Do we have the right people? Do I need to hire some outside help? Do I need some partners? Could we get some automation in here? Could we systemize something? What will that cost? How much am I willing to spend against it? So now we get down to the very, very end of really the planning process, which is, I know what I'm going to do. Now I got to plan the resources and plan to ensure I have the talent and wherewithal to accomplish these things.
Okay. So now it's brass tacks. You're starting to plan out, how am I actually going to get it done? Or at least maybe not even that part. It's saying, what resources do I need to get it done? What kind of talent do I need? What kind of budget do I need? And laying that out.
The how you're going to get it done. A lot of it actually is in the previous week.
Okay.
Is in addition to saying here's our objectives, I would take it to the next step, and then finalize that next step in this budget and resources. Because in order to figure out the budget and resources, you need to know what the steps are. Unless you've decided, we're going to write copy for the website, for our podcast, you don't know that you need a copywriter.
Right, but at this point, you're still not, if I understand correctly, you're not necessarily getting into the nitty-gritty kind of week-by-week game plan. You're saying, okay, I want to start a podcast, or I want to create a new website, or update our website in the second quarter. So I know that I'm going to need a website like developer/designer, and I know I need probably a writer because I don't want to write it myself. But you're not saying, okay, like what's the week-to-week exact, project plan, right? You're just saying, oh, well, I'm going to need a website developer, so I better start finding one and figuring out how much they cost and so forth.
Yeah. And exactly right. That's exactly right. And decide, are you willing to invest that? Right? You're either going to invest in partners and help and guidance or whatever, or not. And now's a good time to map that out. And you can have contingencies. You can say, okay, well, in the third trimester, I'm going to plan on hiring a coach, or I'm going to plan on hiring a ghostwriter, assuming we've hit 1.5 million, or assuming we've hit 3.5 million, or whatever it is. All right, at least you've got clear indicators.
Yeah, and we've talked before on this show about building out your virtual team, and if you know ahead of time, hey, I'm going to need to get a ghostwriter or a copywriter or a website developer, then you can be kind of alert to that, and you can be asking people in conversation, like, hey, do you know a website developer? And if you see someone who has a really great website, ask them who did. So you're kind of more alert to that and tuned to it. So even if you don't need that person for 3 or 6 months, if you've identified that as a resource need, you're much more likely to maybe just come across that person or get introduced, and the universe will deliver if you're alert to it and kind of have written down that you need to find that kind of talent.
Exactly right. And also, and Will, you'll cut this out if you don't want me to say it. There's this really amazing resource by this guy, Will Bachman, that he has his entire list of, copywriters and website designers and, everything you need that has been contributed by people in the community. So you find out you need something, you can go to that list. And it's a great start.
That is a good start. And we're always happy to help. So let's bring it home. What week 8? I'm on pins and needles. How do we finish the process?
You finalize. Well, you finish the 8 weeks by having a lot of chocolate ready to celebrate,
Okay.
and which is the real purpose of week 8. All the weeks up to now, or and including budgeting, or especially budgeting, might raise some concerns or challenges. And gosh, can we really do this or not? And this is where you resolve those challenges. This is where you finalize the details. Well, I will tell you, I'm actually, for me personally, I don't use the map it out week by week, that level of granularity, in part because I don't have the patience for it. And also because I find those plans are fragile. My experience with most consulting firms is if we say, you've got 3 months to launch this podcast, and let's get this launched. What do you need to do next? We don't need to literally lay it out week by week. In consulting, most folks are smart and seem to be able to do it without that level of detailed plan. But if you're smart and do like that level of detailed plan, week 8 you could lay it out, or between week 7 and week 8. Again, because we're not trying to do this all in 2 days. You could take some time and take those top handful of priorities for the coming trimester and map those out. And then week 8, you finish. And then next retrospective month, you can map out the detailed plans for the next sprint. But I don't think you have to do the entire year's objectives granularly week by week, certainly not during this planning period.
Yeah, that would, I think, was it Eisenhower? I don't know. Someone smart said, I think, that plans are useless, but planning is essential. That kind of general idea.
There you go.
Yeah, something like that. All right, David. So we got an 8-week review and planning process. Fantastic. We will include a link in the show notes. Any final messages or thoughts to share here?
If you made it through as a listener, if you made it through this whole conversation, because Will, you and I, we talked probably a little long this time. You definitely have the endurance and what it takes to do this process. It is actually extraordinarily effective, and so I would at least just give it a try. Give it a try this year and see how it works for you, and adapt it and make it work for you. With maybe do it in 4 weeks or 6 weeks or 12 weeks.
And if you do, then let us know. Reach out, let us know how the planning process went, any tweaks that or improvisations or alternate ideas that you have around planning. I'd love to hear about it. I'll share it with David. David, as always, so awesome to have you on the show. So much fun. Great ideas. We'll include a link to your article where you lay this out in more detail. Thanks so much for joining today.
Oh, thank you, Will. It was fun, as always.
And everybody go to davidafields.com, subscribe. You won't regret it. First thing I read every Wednesday morning. David, thanks a lot for joining.
Okay, well, talk to you soon.